Hi all, welcome to ESI Cloud Trainings. My name is Shalini Neralla. Let's get started with Boomi Atom Sphere Basic Training Day 9 session. The agenda plan for today is we'll discuss about database to Salesforce create, database to Salesforce update, connector call to insert or update. So in our last class we have seen SQL lookup. So we have done a lookup on database to see if the record exists or no, right? So now we'll have to do a lookup on Salesforce application to see if the record exists or no, by which we are using connector call to insert or update that data. And then we'll see Salesforce delete, Salesforce merge. Right? Let's get started. So now in Salesforce we have these objects, right? And if we go to database, so I have these particular records in database. So now we'll try to integrate data between Salesforce database and Salesforce, right? So now if I integrate this data to Salesforce, it creates duplicates for me. Now, so what am I going to do? I'll create one more record here. Okay, let me change this. So remember, this ID is what we created, but when inserted into Salesforce, it creates another internal ID. So when we are referring to this, we need to give that particular ID here. And name, let's give it a test underscore database. And we'll say this type integrator and just say apply. So now let's delete the remaining, else it creates duplicates. This is done, say apply. So now I have only one record. Okay, let's now try to integrate this record to Salesforce. Okay, so let's go to Boomi, create a folder day 9, and then create a new process. Let's call this db2sf create and configure the endpoints now. Say start and configure the source, which is database. Select your connection and create the operation. Let's call this account database operation. And let's import the table. So select sf underscore account, select all the fields, say next. Okay, this is done. Now all fields are here. So just say save and close. And we have discussed all these options in our last class, right? So just say save and close. Now let's configure our target, Salesforce. And this action is going to be send. Select your connection and create your operation, right? So call this account Salesforce connector operation, and we'll now try to import it. Salesforce connection, say next. So see your object type, so you can select your own object type here. So now I've selected account, and here you can see the actions as create, update, upsert, delete, merge. So create, it creates new records in a defined object, and it generates the internal ID field automatically for each document that is executed. And coming to update, it updates existing records in a defined object. So we need to supply the internal ID field in the request to update the existing object records. And upsert is a convenient way to do common insert new or update existing integrations. So instead of doing a lookup against Salesforce to determine if a given record exists and then perform separate insert or update mapping and then calls accordingly, It simply performs one map to upsert request and let Salesforce to determine whether to do insert or update. But to use this feature, we need to customize the particular Salesforce object to designate at least one field as the external ID. Because objects can have multiple external IDs defined, select which one to use in the operation, right? And then we have delete. So delete, it deletes the existing records in a defined object. So we need to supply the internal ID field in the request to delete the existing object record. Whereas coming to merge, it merges Salesforce records of the same object type into one record. You must use the master record or ID field to indicate which of the records is the master record, right? And it merges the records into one of the records called the master record. It deletes the other records and reparents the related records. There is also one more action called convert lead, but this is only available in version 15 and more recent versions of Salesforce. So what convert lead does is it converts leads to an account, contact, or opportunity. So with that, let's do create first. Say next. This takes time to create the object tree. So this is now done. Say next and finish. So see here it has created you the profile. So this is the profile that is created. Close this. So here we have written application responses. So when an error prevents an operation from completing, this setting does the following. If on, it continues processing and passes the error response to the next component to be processed. Successful documents return an XML response with a success status of true and the object's internal ID, whereas failed documents have a status of false. And if this is off, aborts processing and reports the error on process reporting page. So then coming to the bulk API, use bulk API, we set the batch size in the batch count field. The connector processes the batches it sends to the bulk API and adjusts batch sizes based on the processing time. There is a 10-minute limit for processing a batch and a 5-minute limit for processing 100 records. If there is a timeout, the connector splits the batch into smaller batches and retries them. There is a limit of 3 retries. Although the bulk API is asynchronous, the Salesforce connector waits for a response. Because the bulk API allows parallel processing, Boomi recommends using a flow control shape with parallel processing enabled in your process. Right? There are also few suggestions when using bulk API. For bulk send, use a flow control with parallel processing enabled in your process. Bulk API is asynchronous but waits for response. Enable purge data in atom management page. This prevents exhausting disk space. So bulk queries store gigabytes of data. Purge data regularly if purge immediately is not enabled. This helps bulk query performance to increase. Increase your atoms default read timeout when querying large records to avoid timeout errors, right? And then we have batch count here. So it's a numeric field to specify the number of documents to send in one Salesforce request. The default is 200. When you use bulk API is turned on, the batch size is 5000 and cannot be changed. So then we have reference fields tab here. So fields in the primary Upsert object that can link the record to other associated objects. For example, account to parent account, opportunity to account. So if you can see here, we have used external ID for reference. So this determines if a specific value should be used to perform the reference. Reference fields use internal ID by default. And object type, so indicates the object type to which reference field is linked. and reference external ID identifies the data that is used to perform the reference. So now if I check this, you'll be able to see reference external ID, and that's by default internal ID that gets generated here, right? So now let's close this operation. So this is done. Now let's use map to convert the database profile to XML profile. So say here db2 sf create map. Select your database profile, and here you can choose the XML profile. So if you expand this, now use Boomi suggest. So just say next, next, finish. So this normally gets created. You can just delete this. So just verify if all of them are correctly mapped, right? So now say save and close. Say stop here. Save and execute this process. So this is now done. Now if I go to Salesforce here, I'll now should be able to see the test underscore database that has been created. So let's check. So see now test underscore database been created and type as integrator. So you can also see the additional information here. So this is how we integrate data between database to Salesforce. Create action. So see here integrator and other information, right? So now let's see db2sf update. So for that, let's have these records into database again. So yesterday we have done this, right? sf to db insert or update. So let's execute this process again to load this data back into database. So understood why we have done this. We first deleted them in database because we don't want to create duplicates in Salesforce. And now because we have done with create, now we are going to do update action. So let's have that data here in database. So see, it has created. And as I told, this is what created by us. This ID is different from what Salesforce have generated. Now if you see here, this is what Salesforce have generated. JWDQAJ. So you will see that this is the ID that it has come up. Understood? So now I'm going to delete this as well. Delete this. Okay, and just say apply. See here, this is now done. Okay, so now what am I going to do for this test record that created? I'll be changing the account type. So let's change this to prospect, and billing street I'm giving as Bangalore. So now what should happen? This have to go and update in Salesforce. So this record have to go and update in Salesforce. So let's go and create the process. So create a new component, db2sf update. So this is done. Now let's select no data. Okay. create database. I'll also choose the operation. And now Salesforce. So this will be a send action. Select the connection and create the operation. Import. So now I'll select update. Say next. So this is done. Now just say next, finish. So say save and close. Now let's take a map. DB2 SF update map. I'll choose the database profile here. And I'll select the Salesforce profile. So just say Boomi suggest. So based on the ID, it goes and updates, right? So just say save and close and say stop. So this is now done. Now if I go to Salesforce and say accounts, so if I open test, I'll now be able to see. So see here, integrator has been modified to prospect, right? And billing address has been changed to Bangalore. So this way the data gets updated. So same number of records and it just gets updated, right? So now let's do this. If the data exists, it have to go and update, else it have to go and insert. So for that, what am I going to do, right? So now let's create another process. New component, db2 sf create update. So with this, select no data, select database here, select the operation. Okay, so now earlier last session we have done SQL lookup. So now let's take decision same way, and let's call this as connector call. So what this connector call does is it has a lookup on application. So see here, there's something called connector call, and you'll see here all the application connectors are available. Only the application connectors are available. So from here I'll select Salesforce. and say get action. I'll select the connection, Salesforce connection, and I'll select operation, right? And now output parameter, I'll be choosing ID. Okay. So input parameters, I need to pass an input parameter. So for which I need to have that filter here. So if I see I don't have the parameter now in order to pass it. So for now what I'm going to do, I'll go to this operation and I'll say add filter on ID. So I'll just say this ID equal to and select that ID. So I'm having a filter on ID. Okay. So save and close. Now in input parameters, I'll be able to pass this ID. And what is this ID? It is the ID coming from database. So I am getting the data from database, and now I have to see if that particular ID exists in Salesforce or no. So I'll have to give the profile element and say database and select your profile and choose the element. So it is sf underscore ID. And if it is equal to null, which means it doesn't exist. If it doesn't exist, go and insert it. If it exists, go and update it. So true, I'll be selecting the insert. Select db to sf create. And if it exists, go and update. And remember the change that we have to do here. So go into the sub process. Say this as data pass through. For the data to pass from main process to sub process. Remove this database here. This is it. Save and close. Update. Data pass through. And give it here. So this is done. Save. So now if I go to database here, so let me modify one. So test underscore database, I'll make this as customer. So we are updating one particular record, customer, and building street here I'll give it as Visakhapatnam. Okay. And I'll also create one more here. I'll create one more record here. This have to go and be created and others have to go into update path. Okay. So I'll say call this as sample integrator. Let's give this Hyderabad and say apply. So this is clear. So we have updated one record and we have created one record. Okay. So let's go to Boomi process. So one have to go into create one document and others will go into update paths. So see now, observe what's going to happen. And you'll have to able to identify why this error has occurred. Okay. So see now, it had given the error saying ID value of incorrect type. So this is because we have created this particular record. We have now created this record and this ID is different from what is there in Salesforce. But because this document is going into update path, we are getting the error. This document have to go into create path because that is not present in Salesforce. So it have to go into create path. But why did it go into update path? So if you check logs here on connector call, you'll observe that only the first record has been compared. Only first record got compared and rest all have gone to false path. Why is it happening like that? So if I see the shape source data, there is only one document coming to connector call. In one document we have all the records. So here in one document we are having all the records, and so it is only having the check on this particular record. Clear? So but now what it should happen, I should get all the records as individual documents to connector call. So what am I going to do here? I'll go to operation and I'll give batch count as 1. So now let's see what happens. Execute. So now we'll see that it worked fine, and to here there is only one document going, and to update we have all the other documents going. So now if I go to Salesforce, you'll see test record is been updated. So see here, type has been changed to prospect and billing address Bangalore. So it's test underscore database that we have modified, right? Let's go to test underscore database. So see here, type customer and billing address we need to see as Vishakhapatnam. So this is done, and now we need to see the new record created. So see here, sample has been created. So this is how it works. Integrator and billing address Hyderabad. So remember, this ID is different from what we created. So let's go here and just update it. Just say apply. So this is how we work with connector call to insert or update the data, right? So now let's see Salesforce delete action. So let's close this off and create a new component. We'll call this Salesforce delete record. Okay, just say create and say no data. Okay, and then so let's create Salesforce. And now this is going to be sent. Select your connection, create the operation. Account delete, import Salesforce connection. Say next. So action is going to be delete. Just say next and next. Finish. Right? So now if I see here, just say stop. And now if I take a map here, Salesforce delete map, and select your delete profile. Delete request. You'll only see the ID here, right? So you need to provide the ID. So say for example, I wanted to delete this sample. Okay, sample record I want to delete. So I'll just copy this ID and give it here. Say okay. So same like last class, we'll just take the dummy profile here. So that's a flat file profile, and we have selected here, right, dummy flat file profile. So this is done. Just say save and close. Let's execute this. You can also execute with test atom cloud. So it says please check the source profile. So just going to the map once. So if you see here, the ID has been lost. So let's copy that ID again. So let's give that ID here again. Okay. So save and close. Execute. So see now, this is executed. Let's go and see in accounts. So all accounts. See here now, sample is not there. So it's got deleted. This is how Salesforce Delete works. So now let's merge two records. Say these two are similar records and you want to merge to one record. Okay, you want to put only test underscore database and you want to delete, you want to merge test to test underscore database. Okay, so how are we going to do that? So let's go back. Let's name this properly. Save and close. And now let's create one more component and call this Salesforce Merge record. Say no data. Salesforce. Let's call this account merge and import. Say merge. Next. Finish. Okay. Save and close. Click OK. Say stop. Now use a map here. Salesforce merge map. So just select your profile here. Merge request. So you'll see here this is the master record and records to merge ID. So what is your master record? The record which will be the main record. So this one. So just give this ID here. And now that which you want to merge. So this you want to merge into this, correct? So you can go and copy this. So give this in records to merge IDs here. Just say OK. Here again, just select your profile, flat file profile, dummy profile. Save and close. So just say OK. Let's make sure we have the IDs. Okay, so they are not there because when you've selected your source profile, we usually lose the default values that are set in target profile. So let's set them. This is here. So this is done. Just say save and close and execute it now. So see, this is done now. Now if you go here and just Click on all accounts again. You'll not see test. So test has been merged into test underscore database, right? So this is how the merge record works. Merge action works. This is for merging two similar kind of records. Okay. So now say we have one more scenario of this kind. So let's go to db2sf create. Okay. So now here, if I go to map and I have removed the name. Okay. Let's now execute and see what will happen. So let's add this source. Let's give it here and execute. So see here what had happened. We have not mapped the required field. So it says required fields are missing. So this is which is application generated. So application has name as a mandatory field, but we have not passed the value for it. For that reason, it had failed. Now in real time, you'll be having this scenario. So the client will ask you to give you the records that are successful, the count of records that are successful, and the count of records that had errored out. Also with the error in to a mail, the error records should be sent to an email. So if you have this kind of scenario, we need to capture all these error records that are generated. Okay. Also, if we are not capturing this record, this error, what is happening, it errors out all the records. Okay. But we don't have want that to happen. So those that are successful should go and get updated in Salesforce, and those that are errored out should be captured. Fine. So if we have this kind of scenario, see now what we'll do. So before to that, let's first go to database and delete all the records except test. This one. So we'll have only test here. Okay. So now those that are errored out should be captured. Okay. So now if you observe here, this has failed. Now what am I going to do? I'll go to operation and I'll say return application response. So we'll now see how this works. So see here we had an error. We sometimes get that kind of error. So just refresh and execute it again. So just execute. So see now this is executed. Now if I see the document, so this is the error response we'll be getting from Salesforce. This is a Salesforce generated information, right? So let's download this. Just download this. And so now let's go to downloads. This is downloaded. Just edit with Notepad++, right? So let's save this. Error response .xml on desktop. So now go back here. So now let's import this error response XML profile. Okay. So I'll go and create the new component profile, select XML profile. So I'll just say call this as error underscore response. So now let's import a profile from XML file, and you have this error response. So just say next. So now you'll see that this is generated XML profile, right? The structure has generated. Now what am I going to do? I'll see if this status is success or no. So for that, let me take a decision here. So from this decision, I'll first check the value. So here I'll be checking from profile element and select XML profile, and then select error response. Then select your element. Now say success. If success equal to true, so which means it is successfully sent, then what am I going to do? I'll just go and stop. But if say there is a error, in that case what am I going to do? I'll generate this. I'll say I'll capture this profile element XML, and I'll say, so I can capture here the message as well, the error message. Error message is 1. Okay. So now let's execute this. I'll say here decision success. So if it is true, I'll just stop. If it is false, which means it has an error, I'm capturing the error message. So let's execute this. So this is now done. If I see the document here, see here the error message is account required fields are missing. So like this, I can capture the error message. And finally, I can combine them. So I'll use a data process here, combine, and we'll send an email. So this is how we work in real time. So in our session now, we have seen create, update. Upsert is something which we are going to see in tomorrow's class, because that is a very important concept and requires a lot of changes to be done in Salesforce as well. So then we have seen delete and merge as well, right? So let's go back to our slides. Now, Salesforce Send. So we have seen create, update, upsert, delete, merge, and we have understood what each one will do. Also, as discussed, there is one more called convert lead, which is only used in version 15 or higher of Salesforce. And reference fields, we have seen external ID. This is used for upsert. So we'll be discussing about this in next class. Salesforce looks for this record to either update or create. So upsert is what we either create. So now we were using this connector call to do insert or update, and we are using different maps as well and connections. So in operations, sorry. In that now, instead of doing all that, you can use only upsert action, and you can get that done. So you are asking Salesforce to determine whether it is existing or no. Use external ID for reference. Determines if a single specific value should be used to perform the reference. Reference fields use internal ID by default. Object type indicates the object type to which reference field is linked. And reference external ID identifies the data that is used to perform the reference. Then options tab, we have seen use bulk API, set the batch size in the batch count field. The connector processes the batch it sends to bulk API and adjusts batch based on processing times. There is a 10-minute limit for processing a batch and a 5-minute limit for processing 100 records. If there is a timeout, the connector splits the batch into smaller batches and retries. There is a limit of 3 retries. Although the bulk API is asynchronous, the Salesforce connector waits for a response. And because the bulk API allows parallel processing, Boomi recommends using a flow control shape with parallel processing enabled in your process. And coming to batch count, numeric field to specify the number of documents to send in Salesforce request. The default is 200. And when use bulk API is turned on, the batch size is 5000 and cannot be changed. So that's the end of our day 9 session. If you have any queries, please let us know. Thank you.